The battlefield stretched for miles, a scarred wasteland of rock, dust, and the twisted remains of machines. Smoke rose in heavy gray columns, curling against the pale green sky of Irelia. The air smelled of burnt metal and scorched earth, a reminder of the fierce fighting that had raged for days. On one side, the alien coalition, creatures of many shapes, sizes, and colors, stood victorious, or at least that was what they believed. On the other, the enemy, the cunning Zytrax, seemed to be retreating, their massive war machines overturned or burning. The aliens celebrated. They had fought together, a mix of species that rarely trusted one another, and somehow they had pushed back the Zytrax. Leaders of the coalition floated above the battlefield in their hovering command platforms, their attention fixed on the ruins below. Their voices crackled across the comm channels, full of relief and pride. "This is the end," said Commander Ryal, a tall insectoid being with 6 sharp eyes that glinted like polished metal. "The Zytrax are finished. The war is over." Beside him, Elira, a luminescent being whose body shimmered like liquid silver, shook her head. "We cannot be certain. They may regroup, or there may be hidden forces. Victory is never absolute." Ryal waved her concern away. "Nonsense. Look at the field. Their fleet is scattered, their weapons destroyed. We have won. This is the moment we have been waiting for." The other alien leaders nodded, confidence swelling among them. On the ground, soldiers began clearing wreckage and tending to the wounded. In the distance, the remaining Zytrax war machines smoked, silent and defeated. The coalition's forces cheered. They believed the battle was won. But amid the smoke and ruin, a small figure appeared. A human. At first, the aliens barely noticed him. He was alone, unarmed, moving carefully through the debris. His clothes were scorched and torn, but his posture was straight, determined. He walked steadily, calmly, like he belonged on the battlefield, even though the aliens assumed he was no match for their enemies. Elira was the first to notice. "Commander," she said, her voice tinged with confusion, "there is someone moving toward the enemy's machines, a human, alone." Ryal squinted at the figure. His eyes narrowed. "A human? Here? What could he hope to do? Let him be. He cannot change anything now." But the human did not hesitate. He moved with purpose, weaving between the wreckage and the fallen machines. His steps were silent, his eyes fixed on the remaining Zytrax forces. For a moment, the aliens simply watched, unsure why a single human would walk toward what they had assumed was a defeated army. As he approached, small explosions began to ripple across the Zytrax positions. Not powerful blasts, but precise, controlled detonations that disabled weapons and cut communications. The aliens watched in shock. The human, with no advanced armor or giant machines, was causing damage to the supposedly defeated Zytrax. "What is he doing?" asked Klin, a reptilian commander with scales the color of midnight. "He has no weapons, no fleet. How can he—" Elira shook her head. "I do not know, but he moves with a strategy. Watch him." The human ducked behind a ruined tower, then leapt onto the side of a Zytrax walker, a massive machine taller than most buildings. Using tools that looked simple, almost primitive, he began to dismantle the machine's weapon systems. Sparks flew as wires were cut and panels were loosened. With each precise movement, the machine powered down, harmless now to the nearby forces. Ryal's mandibles clicked in irritation. "This is impossible. One human cannot do this." But he could not deny what he saw. The human was clever, moving faster than the aliens could track, using the terrain and wreckage to his advantage. He avoided detection from hidden Zytrax turrets, disabling them quietly, one by one. The alien leaders began to murmur among themselves. "He's brilliant," Klin admitted reluctantly. "He anticipates their moves. He uses their own machines against them." "Impossible," Ryal repeated, though doubt crept into his voice. "No single being can accomplish so much." Yet the proof was undeniable. The human leapt from one ruined vehicle to another, setting off small charges that toppled enemy walkers into the dust. The Zytrax, once confident in their retreat, began to panic as their remaining weapons failed. Some tried to flee, only to find the human already ahead, cutting off their paths, forcing them into traps they did not see coming. Elira floated closer to Raal on her platform. "Commander, perhaps we underestimated the human species. This one, he is remarkable." Raal scowled. "He may be skilled, but he cannot possibly win the war alone. Let him act. It will not change the outcome." But even as he spoke, the human's actions had begun to inspire some of the alien soldiers on the ground. They watched him, a strange mixture of awe and disbelief in their eyes. His clever movements, his careful calculations, and his courage, unarmed and alone, stood in stark contrast to their own reliance on massive fleets and advanced technology. On the battlefield, the human paused atop a ridge, surveying the remaining Zytrax forces. He was small, but he radiated confidence. He seemed to understand the weaknesses of his enemies instinctively. He did not charge recklessly. Every step was deliberate. Every action had a purpose. Then he acted again, and the shock spread across the coalition forces. He used a combination of small explosions and overturned debris to create barricades, trapping Zytrax squads that had thought themselves safe. The alien soldiers realized, with growing astonishment, that the human was achieving what even their combined fleets could not. Controlling the battlefield with strategy, not just firepower. Raal clenched his fists. "I still do not trust him. He is unpredictable, but I cannot deny that he is changing the situation." Meanwhile, the human continued his advance. He avoided the larger groups of Zytrax, striking at the weak points in their defenses. He was a ghost, moving between shadows and ruins, dismantling their machines and cutting off their escape. The Zytrax leaders grew frantic, sending squads to intercept him, but each attempt failed. The humans seemed to anticipate their every move, striking quickly, then vanishing before they could respond. Elira's voice was barely a whisper. "Commander, he may be what turns this battle completely in our favor." Raal's eyes followed the human's movements. Despite his pride and initial skepticism, even he could not deny the skill he saw. A single human, unarmed, unprotected, relying only on his wits, was doing what fleets and armies could not. The battlefield, which had seemed calm after the coalition's supposed victory, was alive again. Smoke rose from new explosions. Metal twisted and groaned under carefully placed charges. The Zytrax soldiers were terrified, confused, and disorganized. And at the center of it all, the human moved with calm determination, unstoppable in ways the aliens had never imagined. As night began to fall over Virelia, the alien leaders looked down from their platforms. The human was still at work, a small figure moving with purpose in the ruins. They had believed the battle was over. They had believed victory was assured. But now, as the human continued his relentless, clever campaign, they realized their assumptions had been wrong. For the first time, the coalition understood that victory could not be taken for granted. And for the first time, they began to see that humanity, small, unpredictable, and underestimated, might hold a power far greater than any of their advanced machines or fleets. Somewhere in the chaos, the human paused, glanced at the stars above, and smiled faintly. He had no grand speech, no demands, no armies behind him. He simply moved forward, doing what needed to be done. And that alone was enough to remind everyone on Virelia that the war was far from over, and that one human could change everything. Smoke swirled, machines groaned, and the battlefield seemed alive again. The coalition leaders exchanged uneasy glances, their pride tempered with awe and fear. They had thought the battle was won, but the human had reminded them of one crucial truth. Never underestimate a species that thrives on intelligence, courage, and adaptability. The illusion of victory had shattered, and as the human disappeared into the ruins, preparing for his next move, the aliens realized that the true battle had only just begun. The morning sun rose slowly over the battlefield of Virelia, casting long shadows across the shattered machines and scorched earth. The alien coalition, still celebrating their assumed victory, moved cautiously. Despite the smoke and chaos, the air seemed tense, almost alive with the knowledge that the battle was not as simple as they believed. Commander Rael hovered over the scene in his platform, 6 sharp eyes scanning the ruins. The human from the previous day was nowhere in sight. For a moment, Rael felt relief. Perhaps the figure had retreated, realizing his small size and lack of weapons made him powerless. But that hope was short-lived. From the far ridge, a figure emerged, stepping carefully between the wreckage and smoldering vehicles. The human walked steadily, unarmed, his movements deliberate, almost like a dance across the broken terrain. His eyes focused on the remaining Zitrax forces, whose numbers were fewer but still dangerous. Elira floated beside Rael. "He is back," she said, her voice calm but urgent. "And he moves with a plan." Rael scowled, the edges of his mandibles clicking. A human alone cannot change the outcome. He is irrelevant. Yet as the human drew closer, it became clear that he was not irrelevant. He began using the battlefield itself as a weapon. Fallen machines became barricades. Twisted metal and debris were placed carefully to channel enemy movements. Small explosions, expertly timed, toppled the Zitrax's remaining walkers, while sensors and weapons systems were disabled without a single shot fired. Every action was precise, each step carefully calculated. Klin, the reptilian commander, muttered in disbelief. "He anticipates their every move." "It is as if he can see their thoughts," Elira nodded. "Perhaps he can. Humans have a strange way of understanding patterns, predicting reactions. He is proving it here." The Zitrax, meanwhile, were growing desperate. Their retreat had been planned, but the human disrupted it completely. Squads attempting to regroup found themselves trapped in corners of debris, their weapons disabled. Panic spread quickly through the ranks, and for the first time, fear replaced their usual confidence. The human paused atop a destroyed tower, surveying the battlefield. His eyes narrowed as he noticed a group of Zitrax attempting to flank him. Without hesitation, he used a combination of small charges and overturned vehicles to create a barrier, cutting off their path. Then with swift and precise movements, he dismantled their weapons and disabled the squad before they could react. Rael's eyes widened. "This is impossible." One human, unarmed, is outmaneuvering trained soldiers and advanced technology. Elira's glow flickered slightly. "He is not using brute force. He uses strategy, improvisation. He turns weakness into advantage." On the ground, some alien soldiers watched in amazement. One of the insectoid warriors, a young recruit named Terran, whispered to his companion, "I never thought I would see this. One human. He is doing what our fleets cannot." The human moved swiftly, silently, like a shadow among the ruins. Each step was purposeful. He used the Zitrax's own machines against them, cutting power lines and triggering small, controlled explosions that trapped enemies or forced them into positions where they could be neutralized. His ingenuity was unmatched, and soon even some aliens began to follow his lead, curious about his methods. Klin frowned, uneasy. "We should stop him. We cannot rely on him. What if he fails?" Elira shook her head. "If we intervene, we may lose the advantage he is creating. Let him continue for now." The human's next move proved his brilliance further. He noticed a hidden supply depot, guarded lightly by a few Zitrax soldiers. Without hesitation, he climbed onto a nearby wreck and used a combination of levers and wires to disable the depot's defenses. Then, using the supplies, he set small, precise traps that neutralized the guards before they could call for help. The depot fell into his control, giving him access to resources he could use immediately. Rael clenched his fists. "I cannot believe this. He is changing the battlefield alone." The human paused, crouched behind a fallen vehicle. He studied the remaining Zitrax positions, noticing their patterns and weaknesses. Then he acted. Using small charges, he created diversions, forcing enemy squads to move where he wanted. Each squad that approached him fell into his carefully laid traps, and soon, the remaining Zitrax forces were scattered, confused, and terrified. Elira's voice was calm but filled with awe. "He is teaching us something, not through words but through action. Human intelligence is remarkable." Some of the alien soldiers began to whisper among themselves. They had always considered humans weak, insignificant. They were surprised, even humbled, by the human's skill and courage. His ingenuity reminded them that strength is not only measured in firepower or numbers, As the sun climbed higher in the sky, the human encountered a group of Zytrax leaders attempting to regroup for a counterattack. He did not flee. Instead, he analyzed the terrain, the enemy positions, and their likely strategies. Then, with careful timing, he used the environment against them. A toppled machine blocked their retreat, while a series of small charges disarmed their weapons. Within minutes, the leaders were trapped, unable to communicate with their forces. The alien commanders observed silently. Even Rael, proud and stubborn, could not deny the human skill. "He is extraordinary," he admitted quietly, almost to himself. Elira's glow brightened. "And yet he does not fight like we do. He adapts, improvises, and uses the battlefield itself as his weapon. He is human." The Zytrax were now in full retreat, their morale broken. Even with their remaining machines, they could not stand against the humans' clever tactics. It was not raw strength or overwhelming firepower that defeated them. It was intelligence, courage, and the ability to think beyond conventional rules. On the ridge, the human paused again. He looked at the alien coalition forces below, noting their hesitation. They had assumed victory was theirs. They had not expected a single human to disrupt everything. A small smile touched his lips, not of arrogance, but of calm determination. He understood that he had more work to do. He moved again, faster now, dismantling weapons, redirecting enemy movements, and creating safe passages for alien soldiers who wanted to follow his lead. Slowly, the coalition began to notice. Some soldiers were inspired, cautiously adopting his methods. Others remained skeptical, unsure if following a human was wise. Rael's 6 eyes scanned the battlefield. He could no longer dismiss the human. "He is changing the course of this battle," he said, his voice tight with a mix of frustration and admiration. Klin hissed softly. "He is one man, Commander. What happens if he fails? What happens if he is caught?" Elira floated closer. "Then we learn. Humans are not predictable, but they are resilient. And this one, he sees possibilities that we do not. He may be the key to finally ending this conflict." Meanwhile, the human had discovered a small group of Zytrax engineers attempting to repair a weapon that could cause massive destruction if completed. Without hesitation, he approached, analyzing the machinery. Using tools from the depot he had taken earlier, he carefully dismantled the weapon in a sequence that prevented the engineers from noticing until it was too late. The Zytrax were helpless to stop him. The coalition forces began to cheer quietly from a distance. They had assumed victory was already theirs, but now they saw it could be more complete thanks to one human. Soldiers who had doubted humanity's strength now whispered in wonder, seeing the truth. Humans were not merely small, weak, or insignificant. They were clever, adaptable, and unpredictable, the perfect combination for survival and success in a chaotic battlefield. The human paused, looking over the battlefield. Smoke rose from disabled machines. Fires burned where he had struck, and the remaining Zytrax forces scattered in fear. Yet he did not celebrate. He moved with purpose, calm and focused, preparing for the next challenge. Rael finally spoke, his voice quiet but firm. "We underestimated them. All of them. The human has shown us something we did not expect. Perhaps we should pay attention," Elira nodded. "Indeed, humanity is not what we assumed. This one has reminded us that the true measure of strength is not always in numbers or weapons, but in intelligence, courage, and the will to act when others hesitate." The human continued his advance, and with every step he reshaped the battlefield. The Zytrax forces were no longer organized. Their leaders were trapped or fleeing. The coalition soldiers, once proud and confident, were now cautious, following the human's example. By midday, it was clear that the human had shifted the balance. What had begun as a presumed victory for the aliens now became a story of strategic brilliance, intelligence, and courage. And the coalition leaders understood, perhaps for the first time, that humans were a force to be reckoned with, not because of strength, but because of their ability to think, adapt, and act when others could not. The battlefield had changed, and at the center of it all stood a single human, unarmed, calm and unstoppable in his determination to face whatever came next. The afternoon sun glinted off the shattered metal of the battlefield. Smoke hung in the air, drifting lazily over the twisted wreckage of Zytrax war machines. Despite the chaos, a calm figure moved through it all. The human. He walked steadily unarmed, yet his presence on the field commanded attention. The alien coalition observed him from their platforms, a mixture of awe and disbelief in their eyes. The Z-Tracks, however, were not finished. Their leaders had retreated earlier, regrouping in secret to plan a counterattack. They could not allow a single human to disrupt their operations. It was inconceivable to them that a lone being could dismantle their forces so completely. Now hidden forces began to emerge. Elite squads of Zytrax soldiers, faster, stronger, and more heavily armed than any the human had faced so far. Commander Raoul watched from above, his mandibles clicking nervously. "They are sending their elite forces," he said. "He may be clever, but even he cannot face them alone." Elira's glow pulsed gently. "Humans think differently, Commander. They do not rely on brute strength. Perhaps he has already planned for this." The human, crouched behind a pile of scorched metal, scanned the approaching Zytrax forces. He observed their formation carefully, noting their movements and likely strategies. He did not panic. He had faced overwhelming odds before and survived by thinking creatively. This time would be no different. As the elite Zytrax forces advanced, the human moved quickly, using the terrain to his advantage. He slipped through shadows, ducked behind ruins, and avoided detection. Small traps laid earlier forced the enemy into predictable paths. When they reached certain points, carefully timed charges disabled their weapons, stunning the soldiers and causing confusion. One Zytrax squad leader barked orders, but his words were drowned out by the sound of collapsing metal and sudden sparks. Soldiers fell into pits of debris or were blocked by overturned vehicles, leaving them vulnerable. The human struck precisely, disarming those who threatened him and redirecting the enemy with careful strategy rather than force. Klin, the reptilian commander, hissed in disbelief. "He is demanipulating them. How can one human control such a situation?" Elira floated closer, her voice calm. "Control is not the right word. He predicts them. He sees their weaknesses and acts faster than they can respond. It is extraordinary." The human paused briefly, crouching behind the remains of a Zytrax walker. He noticed a group of enemy sharpshooters attempting to flank him from the ridge. Without hesitation, he used debris to create a series of reflective surfaces, blinding their targeting systems momentarily. Then with quick movements, he toppled a large piece of metal, causing the sharpshooters to stumble and lose their formation. Raoul's mandibles clicked in frustration. No human could think this quickly. No human could anticipate so many actions at once. Yet the human's brilliance was undeniable. Each movement disrupted Zytrax's plans. His traps, diversions, and clever manipulations of the battlefield forced the elite forces into confusion and disorder. They tried to regroup, but every move they made seemed anticipated, blocked, or countered. The alien soldiers on the ground watched, some inspired, some terrified. Young recruits whispered to one another, astonished by what they saw. "Is it possible for one human to be this skilled?" one asked. Terran, the insectoid soldier from before, nodded slowly. "I see it with my own eyes. This is not luck. This is strategy. This human, he is a genius." As the elite Zytrax forces pushed forward, they reached a ruined structure where the human had set one of his most complex traps. Using debris, overturned machines, and timing controlled by small charges, he created a maze that forced the enemy to scatter and isolate themselves. One by one, they fell into traps he had prepared. Their weapons neutralized, their coordination shattered. Even Zytrax leaders could not understand what was happening. They had trained for years, mastering advanced technology and tactics, yet a single human disrupted everything they had learned. Panic spread among their ranks. The elite forces, once confident and disciplined, were now struggling to survive against an opponent they could not predict. Raoul finally admitted aloud, "I underestimated him. We all did, humanity. They are unlike anything I imagined." Elira's glow brightened slightly. "He is showing us a truth we cannot ignore. Intelligence, courage, adaptability. These are weapons too, perhaps the strongest of all." The human's focus never wavered. He moved again, targeting a group of Zytrax engineers who were attempting to repair a critical weapon system. With careful observation, he noticed the weak points in the machinery and the patterns of the engineers' movements. He acted swiftly, dismantling crucial components while remaining unseen. Sparks flew, panels fell, and the weapon became useless before the engineers could respond. The Zytrax soldiers, noticing the sabotage, tried to retaliate. But the human was already gone, moving like a shadow through the ruins, appearing where he was least expected. Small explosions, controlled and precise, disabled their vehicles and forced them into disadvantageous positions. Some alien soldiers began to follow the human's example. They studied his movements and adapted, learning to think like him, to anticipate rather than react. Even seasoned commanders were impressed, realizing that the human's method was unlike anything they had known. The human paused again, surveying the battlefield. Smoke rose from disabled machines. Fires burned in scattered places. The elite Zytrax forces were isolated, trapped, or fleeing, and yet he did not celebrate. His mind already worked on the next step. The human understood that the battle was far from over, and that victory depended on constant awareness, quick thinking, and careful action. Raoul spoke quietly to Elira. He has changed everything. We cannot take anything for granted. The battle is not over, and he may be the key to its conclusion. Elira nodded. Humans are not like us. They adapt, improvise, and endure. This one has shown that the mind can be a weapon stronger than any machine or army. The Zytrax attempted one final push, concentrating their remaining forces to break through the humans' defenses. They had strength, numbers, and advanced weapons, but the human had strategy, patience, and creativity. Using the terrain, debris, and his traps, he outmaneuvered them at every turn. He redirected their movements, separated their units, and dismantled critical equipment. Each attempt to overpower him failed. The human then noticed a critical weakness, a central command unit controlling the remaining Zytrax forces. It was vulnerable, lightly defended, and essential to their coordination. Without hesitation, he moved toward it, avoiding patrols and traps, using every skill he had demonstrated over the past hours. Finally, he reached the command unit. Using careful manipulation, he disabled its systems, cutting off communications and leaving the Zytrax forces blind and uncoordinated. Panic spread rapidly among the enemy, and their final push collapsed completely. The coalition soldiers, once doubtful, now watched in awe. The human had achieved what fleets and armies could not. He had dismantled the elite forces and disrupted the entire operation. His intelligence and adaptability had won the day. Raoul finally spoke to the other commanders. We cannot ignore this. One human has changed the tide of battle. Perhaps we should learn from him. Follow his lead. Elira's voice was calm but filled with respect. Indeed, humanity is not merely small or weak. They are clever, adaptable, and courageous. And this one, he is a reminder that true strength is more than numbers and firepower. The human, standing amidst the ruins, took a moment to breathe. He looked at the scattered Zytrax forces, at the coalition soldiers who now regarded him with respect, and at the battlefield that had been transformed by his actions. He did not boast. He did not demand recognition. He simply understood the power of intelligence, creativity, and courage. The day was far from over, and more challenges would come. But the human had proven one undeniable truth. Even against overwhelming odds, even against elite forces and advanced technology, one individual could change the course of a battle with strategy, foresight, and unwavering determination. And as the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows over the broken battlefield, the human prepared for the next challenge. The Zytrax would not give up easily, and the coalition would need guidance. But one thing was certain. The human had turned the tide, and nothing would ever be the same. The evening sky of Virelia glowed with shades of orange and violet. The battlefield bathed in the soft light of a setting sun. Smoke from destroyed machines lingered in the air, giving the landscape an otherworldly appearance. Despite the apparent calm, tension simmered beneath the surface. The Zytrax were not defeated yet, and the human, unarmed but relentless, moved carefully among the ruins, preparing for the challenges that lay ahead. Commander Raoul hovered over the battlefield in his platform, 6 eyes scanning every movement. The human had been extraordinary, dismantling elite Zytrax squads and disabling their weapons with precision and intelligence. For the first time, Raoul admitted the truth he had resisted for so long. This human was not just clever, he was essential. Elira, Raoul said, his voice quiet, tinged with a mixture of respect and frustration. We can no longer ignore him. He has changed the battlefield, perhaps. Perhaps we should follow his lead. Elira's luminescent form shimmered as she considered his words. Indeed, Commander. The human moves with understanding that surpasses our expectations. He has insight into strategy and unpredictability. It may be wise to allow him to guide our remaining forces. On the ground, the human crouched behind a broken tower, examining the remaining Zitrax positions. Even after hours of battle, he showed no signs of exhaustion. His eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned for weaknesses, patterns, and potential threats. It was clear that he was preparing for something more significant than the skirmishes he had faced so far. The Zitrax, realizing their earlier forces had been neutralized, had regrouped in a hidden location. They worked quickly, repairing damaged equipment and preparing a new weapon. This device, if completed, could wipe out large sections of the battlefield and destroy the coalition's momentum entirely. The human noticed signs of activity from afar, smoke rising in unnatural patterns, movements that suggested construction rather than retreat. He moved cautiously toward the source, aware that the Zitrax were likely expecting him, yet he did not hesitate. He had faced impossible odds before and had survived by relying on observation, intelligence, and clever use of the environment. Now he would face a challenge that required all of these skills and more. Raoul and Elira observed the human's approach. "Commander," Elira said softly, "he has discovered something. I sense it. He moves with purpose toward a critical target." Raoul's mandibles clicked nervously. "If he fails, the consequences could be catastrophic. We must prepare our forces to follow his lead." The human crept through the ruins, using shadows and debris to remain hidden. His eyes studied the terrain, calculating angles, distances, and potential hazards. Small traps, which he had previously set to control enemy movement, now served as protective barriers, giving him space to advance without interference. Finally, he reached the edge of a large Zitrax compound, partially hidden by twisted metal and smoke. From his vantage point, he could see the engineers working on a massive weapon, its core glowing faintly with dangerous energy. He understood immediately that this device could turn the tide of the entire war if left unchecked. The human analyzed the situation. The engineers were skilled, but their movements were predictable. The weapon's design revealed its weakness. The core could be neutralized with precise intervention. He could not attack directly. The Zitrax would detect him immediately. Instead, he planned a sequence of careful, deliberate actions. Meanwhile, the coalition forces, having observed his previous successes, were beginning to trust him. Soldiers and commanders alike watched from a distance, ready to follow his lead when necessary. Some were inspired, eager to learn from his tactics. Others remained cautious, unsure of how much to rely on one human, no matter how capable he seemed. The human made his move. He first disabled several external defenses, using debris and small controlled explosions to create distractions. The Zitrax engineers responded, rushing to repair the apparent damage, unaware that the real threat was inside the compound. He slipped through a narrow gap, avoiding sensors and patrols, moving silently toward the weapon. Raoul watched from above, unable to speak. He could only observe as the human navigated the complex with skill and confidence, dismantling security measures and neutralizing threats without drawing attention. The alien commanders whispered among themselves, realizing that the human's brilliance was beyond anything they had ever seen. Inside the compound, the human examined the weapon's core. It pulsed with energy, waiting to be completed. He carefully studied its structure, identifying the points where he could intervene without triggering a catastrophic explosion. With steady hands, he began dismantling key components, using tools salvaged from previous encounters. Sparks flew, wires twisted, and panels were removed in a precise order, rendering the weapon harmless. The Zitrax engineers noticed immediately and attempted to stop him, but he was already prepared. Small traps and diversions had forced some of them into positions where they could be immobilized or distracted. The human moved with speed and accuracy, dismantling the weapon faster than they could respond. Outside the compound, the coalition forces noticed the sudden disruption among the Zitrax. Soldiers whispered in awe, realizing that the human was neutralizing a threat that could have destroyed them all. Some began to adopt his tactics, setting minor traps and blocking paths to aid in the effort, guided by his example. Elira turned to Raoul. "Commander, the human is not only saving us, but teaching us. His methods are clear, strategic, and adaptable. Perhaps this is the lesson we needed to learn. Intelligence and adaptability can surpass sheer strength." Raoul nodded slowly, still in disbelief. I have underestimated humans. This one, he is extraordinary. The human, having dismantled the weapon, did not pause. He continued to secure the area, ensuring that no remaining Zytrax forces could complete another device. His movements were careful, deliberate, and effective. Every step reinforced his understanding that victory relied on preparation, foresight, and the courage to act when others hesitated. As night fell, the battlefield began to quiet. The Zytrax, realizing their most dangerous weapon had been neutralized, retreated further, their morale broken. The coalition forces, inspired by the humans' leadership, advanced cautiously, securing key positions and capturing remaining enemy soldiers. The human finally emerged from the compound, calm and composed. He surveyed the battlefield, noting the positions of allies and remaining threats. He had not acted for glory or recognition. His goal had been clear from the start: protect those who could not protect themselves and neutralize the most dangerous elements of the enemy's strategy. Rael descended closer to the battlefield, observing the human's movements. He has done what we could not, he admitted aloud. He has saved countless lives and ensured that we have the advantage. Perhaps we were wrong to underestimate humanity. Elira glowed brighter, a sign of her agreement. Indeed, humans are clever, adaptable, and courageous. This one has shown us the truth. Strength is not only in numbers or weapons. It is in intelligence, creativity, and the willingness to act when others fear to move. The human, standing amidst the ruins, looked toward the stars above. He did not celebrate, for he understood that more challenges would come. The Zytrax were not yet defeated, and other threats likely waited in the shadows. But he had proven one undeniable truth: careful thought, courage, and adaptability could overcome even the most formidable obstacles. Some coalition soldiers approached cautiously, asking for guidance, for insight into how they could adopt his strategies. The human spoke to them, sharing simple instructions and ideas, teaching them to think creatively and strategically rather than relying solely on brute force. Slowly, the aliens began to see him not as a lone warrior but as a leader, a guide who could help them win the war without unnecessary loss of life. Rael, hovering above, considered the situation carefully. The human had not only neutralized the weapon but had inspired a new way of thinking. The alien coalition could now approach the remaining battles with strategy, flexibility, and intelligence, guided by the example of one remarkable human. As the stars shone brightly in the night sky, the battlefield of Virelia was transformed. The ruins remained and the smoke lingered, but hope had returned. The human had demonstrated that victory was possible, even against overwhelming odds, through intelligence, creativity, and courage. And as he moved forward, ready for the next challenge, the alien leaders understood that this human was more than a fighter. He was a symbol of what humanity could achieve, an example of brilliance, adaptability, and courage in the face of the impossible. The Zytrax forces, shaken and leaderless, would not recover easily. And the human, calm and determined, prepared to meet whatever came next. The coalition had learned an important lesson. Humans were unpredictable, intelligent, and capable of changing the course of any battle. Victory was no longer assumed. It was earned through careful planning, courage, and the unmatched ingenuity of a single human who refused to back down. The battlefield of Virelia was quiet now, but the silence was tense. The sun had set, leaving only the faint glow of fires among the wreckage. The coalition forces were cautious, their eyes scanning the horizon. Though the Zytrax had been weakened and their secret weapon destroyed, the threat was not gone. Somewhere in the shadows, the remaining Zytrax forces plotted their next move, hoping to reclaim what had been lost. The human, standing atop a ridge overlooking the battlefield, surveyed the terrain. His movements were calm and measured, his mind working faster than any machine or soldier around him. He understood the enemy's patterns, their weaknesses, and the opportunities the terrain offered. He did not rush. Patience, he knew, was often stronger than force. Commander Rael hovered above, 6 eyes fixed on the human. He had watched the human turn impossible odds into victory after victory. Now he realized that the final battle would not be won by armies alone. It would be won by strategy. Intelligence and courage, Elira, Rael said, his mandibles clicking with seriousness. We have underestimated humans, this one. He has taught us more than we have learned in years of war. Elira's glowing form shimmered in agreement. Indeed, he has shown us that leadership is not only about power, but about insight, adaptability, and the courage to act when others hesitate. The human began moving down from the ridge toward the remaining Zytrax forces. He did not carry weapons, but he carried something far more powerful: knowledge, strategy, and the ability to anticipate his enemy. His presence alone inspired those around him. Coalition soldiers followed cautiously, watching, learning, and ready to act when he gave the signal. The Zytrax, hidden in a fortified canyon, had regrouped their remaining troops. They were confident that, with their last forces, they could strike a decisive blow against the coalition. They did not expect the human, the small, unarmed figure who had dismantled their elite squads and neutralized their weapon, to arrive at their stronghold. As the human approached the canyon, he paused to study the enemy's positions. He noted guard patterns, weak points in the fortifications, and potential hazards. Then, with a plan forming in his mind, he began to act. He moved silently, placing small charges to block enemy exits and creating paths that would funnel Zytrax soldiers into predictable positions. Each step was precise, each movement calculated. The elite Zytrax forces, despite their skill, could not anticipate his actions. From above, Raal and the other commanders watched in awe. "He is orchestrating the battlefield," Raal said quietly. "Every step, every trap, every movement, it is all coordinated. He is not just fighting, he is leading." Elira nodded. "And yet he does it without arrogance or command. He leads through action, showing what must be done rather than ordering it." The human reached the canyon floor. The Zytrax sent patrols to intercept him, but he was ready. Using carefully timed distractions, traps, and misdirection, he neutralized each patrol before they could alert the main force. Sparks flew, debris shifted, and confusion spread among the enemy ranks. Then came the critical moment. The human identified the command center of the Zytrax forces, their remaining leaders coordinating the last attempt to reclaim the battlefield. He did not attack directly. Instead, he used diversionary tactics to isolate them. Small explosions drew attention elsewhere, and obstacles forced their guards to split up. In moments, the command center was vulnerable. With precision and calm, the human dismantled critical systems in the command center. Communications were cut, weapons were disabled, and the remaining Zytrax leaders were trapped. Panic swept through the canyon. Soldiers, now leaderless and confused, attempted to regroup, but the human had anticipated their moves. He directed them subtly, through traps and blocked passages, until the enemy forces were scattered, disorganized, and powerless. The coalition forces moved forward cautiously, inspired by the human's example. They captured remaining Zytrax soldiers and secured strategic positions. What had seemed impossible, the complete defeat of the enemy's elite forces, was now within reach. Raal's mandibles clicked softly. He has done what no army could do. He has dismantled their last hope. We owe him respect and recognition. Elira glowed brightly, and perhaps more. This human has shown us the true strength of his species. Intelligence, courage, and adaptability. They are weapons more powerful than any fleet or army. The human paused at the center of the canyon, looking at the captured Zytrax forces. He did not gloat or boast. He moved with purpose, ensuring that no weapon could be rebuilt and that the enemy could not regroup. Each action was careful, deliberate, and aimed at preventing unnecessary loss of life. He then turned to the coalition soldiers who had followed him, offering simple instructions on securing the area and maintaining vigilance. They listened attentively, learning from his methods, inspired by his example. The human did not demand obedience. He led by showing what could be done, teaching through action. As the night deepened, the remaining Zytrax forces surrendered. Their leaders, trapped and unable to coordinate, recognized that further resistance was futile. The battlefield, once filled with chaos and fire, was now quiet, the enemy neutralized. The coalition soldiers cheered softly, their respect for the human evident. They had witnessed his brilliance firsthand, the power of his mind and courage. Some approached him cautiously, asking questions, seeking guidance, eager to learn how one being could achieve so much against overwhelming odds. The human spoke with calm authority, explaining simple strategies and tactics, sharing his understanding of the battlefield and the enemy. The aliens listened, learning that intelligence and adaptability could change the course of a battle more than numbers, strength, or advanced technology. Ral descended closer to the human, observing his actions. "You have done what we could not," he admitted. "You have turned the tide, saved countless lives, and ensured victory. Humanity, you have taught us all a lesson we will not forget." The human nodded silently. He did not seek praise. His satisfaction came from knowing that the battlefield was secure and that the enemy had been neutralized. He understood the importance of careful planning, intelligence, and courage. These qualities he knew were the true measures of strength. Elira floated near him, her glow soft but bright. "You have proven that humans are remarkable, clever, adaptable, and fearless. One human has altered the course of this war through insight, strategy, and courage. It is a lesson we must remember." The coalition leaders gathered, acknowledging the humans' contribution. They realized that victory was not solely due to their combined forces, but because one human had demonstrated the power of intelligence, quick thinking, and fearless action. For the first time, they considered humanity not as a minor species but as a force to be respected, capable of leadership and innovation. The human stood quietly, surveying the battlefield one last time. The Zytrax were defeated, their weapons neutralized, and their forces scattered. The coalition soldiers, inspired by his actions, now looked toward the future with hope. They had learned that true strength was not in numbers or firepower, but in courage, intelligence, and the will to act when others hesitated. Ral finally addressed the assembled coalition. "Let it be known," he said, "that today victory was achieved not by fleets or armies alone, but by the courage and intelligence of a single human. Let us remember the lesson he has taught us. Never underestimate humanity." Elira's voice rang with agreement. "The human has shown us the potential of his species. They are not weak. They are not insignificant. They are capable of greatness." The human, standing amidst the coalition soldiers, allowed himself a small smile. He had not sought glory, only action and result. Yet in that moment, he realized that his efforts had changed the perception of his species across the galaxy. Humans would no longer be underestimated. As the night settled over Veralia, the battlefield quieted. The fires burned low, smoke drifted lazily into the sky, and the stars shone brightly above. The coalition forces began to organize, secure, and plan for the future. The Zytrax threat had been neutralized, thanks to the brilliance and courage of one human who had acted when others hesitated. The human looked toward the stars, understanding that this victory was just one of many challenges humanity would face in the galaxy. Yet he also understood something more profound. The strength of a species is not measured only by its technology or numbers, but by the intelligence, courage, and creativity of its people. And so, on the battlefield of Veralia, a quiet truth was made clear. The battle was never truly won until humanity stepped forward. The human turned, ready to move forward, knowing that the galaxy was vast and full of challenges, but confident that with courage, intelligence, and determination, humanity could face anything. The coalition leaders watched him, no longer with doubt but with respect and admiration. A new era had begun, and humans were no longer to be underestimated. The stars above shone brightly, reflecting the promise of a future shaped by courage, wisdom, and the unique strength of humanity. And on Veralia, the name of one human would be remembered, not for power but for the brilliance, bravery, and determination that changed the course of a battle, and perhaps the galaxy itself.